but never or who enrolled but never attended in the provider portal themselves. This change is going to allow providers to remove children quicker and easier with fewer steps involved. So that's a very exciting change that is coming. Just a reminder, providers must report a child that is not attending within 5 business days. So with this new change, do not wait to make those reports. So the first thing you will do is log on to your provider portal through iLead and select your absences tab. Once you have clicked on that, it's going to come up with the name of all your children. From here, you will select the hyperlinked name for the child who is no longer attending. So as a reminder, children are allowed 40 occasional absences in an enrollment year. Their enrollment year starts and ends on their anniversary date, and that anniversary date is listed under My Vouchers in the provider portal as well as the parent portal if parents want to see that. Providers are still paid for those occasional absences. However, this does not include multiple weeks in a row marked as absences or off days after a child is no longer attending. So make sure that as soon as a child is no longer attending, that you are going in and reporting that in the portal right away. Also, as a reminder, parents and providers receive notices after a child has missed 10 days, then again at 20, 30, and 35 days before the vouchers finally terminate after their 40th absence. So if you go in and report a child that is no longer attending, that takes the vouchers out. You can always have vouchers reinstated if a child is removed and then that parent decides to come back at a later date and you've allowed them to return to your program. So that's not going to hurt anything. So that, we want to make sure that you're reporting that right away and not like dragging that out for weeks and weeks and weeks and then saying, oh, whoops, now that kid really isn't coming back. We want to make sure that you're going in and reporting that non-attending child within those 5 days as required by policy. So once you've selected that child's hyperlink, clicked on their name here, it's going to take you to the vouchers page. And starting on March 1st, you will see a box down here at the bottom that says no longer attends that you can check. So you will not see that right now. If you open up your portal today, that is not there. All the rest of the information listed here is on that screen. But after March 1st, when that system updates, you will see this no longer attends box. This will replace the need to go in and complete one of the roster cleanup forms for a child who is no longer attending. So you will still be required to use that roster cleanup form if a child's start date is changing, they require a gap in care, a child is paid incorrectly, attendance is recorded incorrectly, or payments need to be recouped. Any of those things that you're normally using the roster cleanup form, you are going to still continue those, but this will give you the ability to immediately report a child that is not attending so that eligibility can go in and make updates to that case. So once you've clicked that box, then right underneath it, there will be a box that pops up that says last day attended. You can either type that in or you can use the calendar icon right next to it to select that date. Remember, vouchers do not cover a child's 2-week notice. So that is why we ask for the last date attended, not enrolled. We want you to list that date there. Do not wait to report a child's last day attended, because that will result in improper payment and then there will be funds that need to be recouped. So make sure that if you're reporting it within a timely manner, that will take care of this before those improper payments happen. If a child enrolled but then never attended your program, so a voucher was assigned, but that child, the parent changed their mind, they're not going to bring their child, then here in this box, you will want to list the first day they had vouchers as their last date attended, and then that will completely remove that voucher. So if they're already attending, you're going to list the last day they actually attended. If they have not attended at all, you're going to put that first day they have vouchers here. Then once you do that, you're going to want to click the Save button. That information then will automatically be sent to the correct eligibility office so that they can make necessary corrections to the vouchers. If that end date has not been paid, then the eligibility office is going to shorten the vouchers to the end of the week where that last day attended was. If you've already been paid, they're still going to shorten the vouchers to the last paid date, and then they will notify the policy consultant that a recoupment is still needed. So just remember, if you are reporting a non-attending child within that required 5 business days, you should never have those overpayments that need to be recouped because we pay 3 weeks behind. So if you're reporting them within that required 5 days, there is plenty of time to make modifications to that voucher before a payment is ever made. Once you have hit save, again, that goes over to the eligibility office. But if you make a mistake, there is a delete button here. You can delete. And then if you need to re-enter, select a different date or you put it on the wrong child, you still have the ability to do that. So just check your dates carefully, make sure you're on the right child and you're getting that last date attended. But if you need to make those changes, you have that ability to do so. So again, this process is available now to providers so that you are not having to report non-attending children by roster cleanup form, wait for that to be processed by your eligibility office, figure out what attendance you still need to put in. So this, you will do it here in the portal as you're doing attendance. It will be transmitted over to your eligibility office, and then you will see those vouchers corrected on your end. Remember that attendance, this is not changing, still needs to be submitted within 2 weeks following the last date of that attendance period. That deadline is Saturday at midnight. So always make sure that your attendance is submitted prior to that Saturday at midnight date. It can be submitted through the provider portal or through one of the approved CCMSs if that's how you're submitting your attendance. If you receive an error message in your CCMS system, like that you're missing a child ID or there's a duplicate child ID or something's missing on an attendance date, even if you hit submit, that is not transmitted. So I talk to providers all the time who say, I say, you haven't submitted your attendance. And they say, yes, I have. I went in and hit submit in my CCMS. But if that error still existed, that does not come through. So if you ever need to verify that your attendance has been submitted, you can log on to the provider portal, hit that absences button, and then just below the red toolbar on the right, it says submission date and time. It's on the far right under that red bar. If that is blank, you have not submitted attendance. So you will need to still, fix whatever you need to fix and then get that resubmitted. As soon as you hit submit, a date and time will be populated there. And that is whether you are submitting through the portal or submitting through your CCMS system. So either way, you will see that date and time appear to know that it was successful. If you do not submit attendance on time, we do automatically pay for 1 missed period. So that is your grace payment. You do still have to submit that because we want to make sure any closures or absences are still recorded. So you will have to get caught up and get that submitted. If you miss 2 submissions in a row, then you will not receive any payments until all of the missing attendance has been submitted. So make sure that you are checking that on a regular basis and getting those in because we don't want you to miss payments. If you are missing attendance, everyone who is listed as an admin in iLead will get a daily reminder that you have not submitted attendance yet. So those start 5 days before a submission is due. So for example, this weekend is a submission weekend on this Saturday. So starting this past Monday, yesterday, everyone should be getting a reminder if they have not submitted that period. You will get that daily. If you miss the date, those will continue indefinitely until you submit. So if you're getting a reminder, even if you thought you submitted, it means that you have not. So you want to make sure that you go in and check that. Something that we see very commonly is that there might be an error, a voucher assigned that shouldn't have been, the program closed, those kind of things, and programs just stop submitting attendance. You can not just stop submitting because that payment does continue to generate as long as there is a voucher assigned to the program. So that would keep you from ever being able to submit attendance again in the future or ever receive a payment. So if you have that you have some issue with your vouchers that's keeping you from being able to submit, please make sure you are reaching out to your policy consultant immediately, and they will help fix whatever that error is to get you past that. All providers also have access to their payment details through Tyler Tech, our payment vendor. That gives you all of the details on which children received payments, which weeks they were paid for, as well as any adjustments. So that's really important to be able to reconcile all of your payments, make sure that you're getting paid for all of your children and you're getting the correct amounts. Even now, more than 18 months into pay by enrollment, we're still hearing from providers who have never accessed that feature. So if you don't know how to access your payment details, make sure you reach out to your policy consultant so that they can tell you how to do that. We have a quick reference guide that makes it really easy to get in there and find all of your payment information. Another reminder about backup attendance. This is still a problem. We have auditors and investigators that are out in the field that are still finding a lot of problems with the attendance submittals. So these will continue. You will still see a lot of people coming door to door or requesting your attendance via email as we continue these audits. So as a reminder, backup attendance is required for all providers in addition to what is submitted in the portal. So that can be done in a number of ways. It could be through one of the 3 approved CCMS systems, as long as the parent is the one checking in and out, not the provider or program staff. It could be through an electronic tracking system. So if you have a spreadsheet you use, or you use a different CCMS that is not one of the 3 approved, those are fine, again, as long as the parents are verifying that information. Or you might just have a paper attendance tracking system, which is totally fine as well. If parents are the ones that are using your CCMS system, they're accessing their QR codes, they're the ones going in and checking in and out, that system will track that the parent is the one that is doing those check-ins and check-outs. And that is all that is required. If your program staff is the one checking in and out, or you provide transportation, so a child is coming directly to you from school, or you're taking children home, or whatever, where parents are not the ones that are doing those check-ins and check-outs, then they do have to verify that attendance on at least a weekly basis. Those can be electronic signatures or those can be written signatures, but they have to have that parent verification if they're not the ones doing the sign in and sign out. And that applies to every program type, no matter what your auspice is. So make sure you are getting those signatures. Again, that is one of the things that audit and investigations is looking for. As they're out in the field, they want to make sure that they see those backup attendance records, that they match what's being submitted in the portal, and that those signatures exist there. Those are required to be kept for at least 3 years. If you were not keeping a backup method prior, do not go back and try to recreate those records. That is considered falsifying attendance records. We do not want you to do that. We want you to start now. So if for some reason you were not doing that before, because you should have been doing it since July of 2024 when we switched to pay by enrollment, please start immediately so that you are in compliance with that requirement. So if you are using a paper backup method, what we are looking for there is the child's first and last name, the date of attendance, a time in and time out, and then a parent's signature or initials. Again, we want that done at least weekly so that the parent can see everything that you are entering, so that they agree with all of the days that you have marked them present or absent in the system. A child being present in your program means that they have attended for at least a meal or an activity. They cannot walk in the building and then immediately walk out with their parents and be counted as present. They have to be there for some portion of that day. Backup attendance must match what is entered in the portal for payment. If it does not, then you may be required to pay all of the funds that you've received for that attendance claimed, and or we may take some negative action against your license. So it is very, very important that you are keeping an accurate backup method. Backup attendance is needed because this allows families to see what the provider is submitting for their attendance and absences and make sure they agree with that. It helps resolve disputes between families and providers. So if there is a disagreement about the number of absences claimed, or a parent isn't sure that their child actually attended that day when you marked that they attended, you guys can look at that backup method together and make sure that it is correct. It's the family's responsibility for receiving the benefit of a voucher. Now that they're not swiping, they should still be responsible for making sure that their child is checked in accurately. So make sure that you are, stressing to parents how important that is to you and your business practices, and that that is their responsibility. And then it just helps verify information entered in the portal. So if you make a mistake, you got the wrong day marked or something like that, and you're going back and trying to consolidate that for yourself, you can look at your backup method and say, oh, shoot, I marked the wrong day. I need to go back and fix that, or reach out to my policy consultant for assistance in fixing that. And then also just make sure your backup attendance is always matches exactly what's in the portal. So if you're closed for the day, a classroom is closed, any of those kind of things, make sure you're noting that on your backup method so that it always agrees with what is in the portal. So just a reminder, auditors and investigators are out there. They are monitoring all of the attendance that is submitted through the portal. Currently, we are looking at all of 25 and 26. We're still seeing a lot of mistakes there. So make sure that you are checking your attendance. And if you do see that you have made a mistake in the past, or you've learned something new that you were doing wrong back then, reach out to your policy consultant. They can put in a ticket. They can make those corrections. They can look at your backup and help you get those corrected in the system. So make sure that you're checking those on a regular basis. If errors are found through this audit and investigations process, then they are going to request that backup method. If you do not turn in a backup method, or it does not agree with what you are submitting in the portal, then a corrective action plan will be issued for your program. Your attendance will continue to be monitored And if you continue to submit incorrectly, then that is considered an intentional program violation at that point after you have been trained on the correct way to do it and given a chance to get that corrected. So at that point, we would issue a repayment for all the state funds that you have been paid throughout that time period. And you may lose the ability to accept vouchers in the future. So we want to make sure that all providers understand and follow all of the policies and procedures around this attendance reporting. If you get a new admin, it is your responsibility to make sure that they are properly trained, that they understand the system. If they need additional training, reach out to the policy consultant. We have information available on our FSSA website. There's lots of resources. So it is the provider's responsibility to make sure that everyone that is submitting attendance as a provider admin knows how to do that correctly. And then just a reminder, it is fraud or what we consider an intentional program violation or IPV to falsify any attendance records, to not record your program closures, to keep payments for children that were not attending. So it is the provider's responsibility to make sure that their attendance records are accurate and that they're returning any payments to the state that they should not have received. We understand that mistakes happen. Everyone is human, but as soon as you realize that you have made that mistake, please reach out to your policy consultant, and they will help you with steps needed to correct those issues, whether that's going back and correcting your attendance, adding those closures, recouping those improper payments, whatever it is. We want to make sure that you maintain your ability to accept CCDF or On My Way, and that all of your records are accurate and match what they should. And that is actually all that I have for you today. So just a quick and easy presentation today with some reminders and that new process about being able to record those yourself in the portal. So again, no changes to the policies, no changes to the process. The only thing is, instead of having to do those multiple steps to get children removed from your roster now, you will be able to report those in the portal and have those changes happen much quicker, and know that it's been reported and that it's being taken care of, instead of having to go through those additional steps with that roster cleanup. For all of the other reasons that you were using roster cleanup, so again, start date changes, improper payments, any of those types of things, make sure you are still using that roster cleanup form. If you have not used that form and you don't know what that is, please, again, reach out to your policy consultant. They will make sure that you get that so that you can use that. But for children who are no longer attending your program or never attended your program but had vouchers assigned, this new process is going to be very quick and easy for you. And then I will jump over to my folks in the Q&A and see if there's anything else that we need to discuss that providers are asking. I'm going to address a question here that says, if a parent forgets to sign in or sign out on the CCMS system, but then they sign for that later. So program staff went in and filled that in, and then the parent signed for it. That is absolutely okay. So as long as that parent has verified it at some point. There's a great question here about the medically fragile box. That is if a child has a chronic medical condition that would require them to miss a lot of days from the program, and they turn in documentation. The parent turns in documentation from the doctor to get that approved. That would allow them to miss additional days beyond those 40 and still get paid. So that is does require that specific documentation from the doctor, and needs to specifically mention that that condition would cause them to miss more than the 40 allotted days. So that does not apply to regular medical issues like COVID or the flu or things like that. So even though children are missing a lot of days, those are not the kind of things that are getting approved as medically fragile. I see a question about part-time vouchers. So if a child is only enrolled 3 days a week, then their other 2 days, as long as they are consistent days, would be marked as off days. But if they miss one of the 3 days that they are enrolled in your program, those would be absences. So it does depend on how many days the child is enrolled and how often you expect that child to be in attendance. And those off days do have to be consistent from week to week if you are using those. If a child is enrolled 2 days or less, that is considered a part-time voucher, and then they would only get half of what the normal subsidy amount is for those 1 or 2 days a week. And we recently made a change in the system where if you do have those part-time children, they are only counted as half an enrollment. So you could have two part-time children that share a space, and that would only be counted as one child against your total enrollment number. So that was a great change that we recently made. Until then, all the years in the past, every child counted as one slot towards your total enrollment. And so that, even if you had part-time children, there was not a way to designate them. So now there is. Um, the medical checkbox that's listed there, you cannot check that box. That is done by the eligibility office. You would see that indicator there, but you are not able to be the one to check that box. So it will not allow that.
Hey Shannon, this is Jen. There was a question
Yeah.
about a provider had asked if they will get a confirmation once they submit that a child is no longer attending. Will they get a confirmation on the screen or a confirmation email that they've submitted that information?
That is a great question, and I don't know that answer, but um, I will follow up on that. I know you'll be able to see that checkbox is checked in there, and that date, so you'll know that it was received. As far as what the next steps are, I will have to find that out, but I can include that in the notes when I send the slides out to you as well. So I see a question about what do I need to do? What do I need to fill out to remove a child? So if you're wanting to remove a child now before this new system change goes into place, I'm assuming that's what your question is, then we have a roster cleanup form that you would fill out, and that would go to the eligibility office for you to report that non-attending child. So that still needs to be used for the next couple of weeks until this new system change goes in place. But then after that, you would be able to use this. I see a question from a provider here that uses a CCMS that is not one of our approved CCMSs. It says, what happens if you don't get that parent signature? You do have the option of either doing that written or electronically. So electronically might be a better option for you, but I would make sure that you are telling parents, if they are not signing those attendance forms, their child will not be able to continue because you have to have that in order to be in compliance with the state auditors and fraud investigators. There's a great question in here about if you have a family that is going to be starting with you in the future. Yes, you can absolutely turn in a provider form, indicate that start date, and have those vouchers set in the future. So you do not have to, wait until that week before to get those vouchers set up. There's also a question here about payments for children when school is unexpectedly closed. So we do not pay for any of those individual days out. So if there's a single day holiday, inclement weather, teacher work days, any of those things, those are still set up as before and after school vouchers. The only time that payment changes for those before and after school kids is if there is a full week break that is set up on the calendar that is turned in ahead of time. So if they have a full week at fall break or spring break or Christmas, any of those things, then that would switch to the higher payment. You would not get that just for those single days out or those unexpected days out. When they have additional days, any of those payments would be charged to the parent. Our only approved CCMS systems, and those are only approved because they talk to our PPP or provider portal system, are Brightwheel, Playground, and Early Learning Ventures. So if you're using one of those three, those will interface with our portal system without you having to do anything else. If you are using anything else, and I see several examples here like Skyward or ProCare or any of those kind of things. Those can be approved as a backup method, but they are not what we consider one of the approved CCMS systems, meaning that they directly communicate with our systems. Again, if you are using one of the three approved CCMS systems and the parents are the ones doing all of the check-ins and check-outs, then you do not have to have another backup method. So that's what those CCMS systems were designed for. If it is not the parents that are doing the check-ins and check-outs, so it is a provider staff that is doing that, then you would have to have a parent signature. So either on a printout that comes from that system or a different method. You would need to make sure that you are doing one of those things. But if it is the parents that are doing the sign in and sign out, that is totally fine on your CCMS without having a separate system. We do still have options for providers to sign up for one of the three approved CCMS systems. They are being offered for the next 2 years at a state discounted rate. So if you want any of the information on signing up for either Brightwheel or Playground or Early Learning Ventures, that is something that is still available to you. So we are happy to give you the information to get in touch with those teams and they will talk you through, how much it is, what the billing options are, whether that's monthly or quarterly or yearly, and how that looks. Those systems do a lot of other things, not just attendance. So they are available to communicate with parents or to send out newsletters or to do other tracking and things like that as well. So there's lots of options through those CCMS systems. I will be sending out the slides that I covered today to everyone's email, and then we will be posting the recording of this on the FSSA website. So you can look for that on the website, and I will share that information with the slides as well. If a parent would like to have a part-time voucher, so 2 days or less, they would indicate that to their eligibility office, who would then set those vouchers that way. And again, that is at half of the normal subsidy rate.
Shannon, can you address the GAP vouchers again, please?
Sure. So a GAP voucher is if a parent needs to miss care for 2 consecutive weeks or more, and the provider is not expecting to be paid during that gap. So we see that sometimes, like a child has a custody agreement, so they're going to go stay with another parent, for a month over the summer or something like that. So parents have the ability to stop their vouchers for that short period of time. That way, absences do not count against them. However, that also means that a provider is not getting paid during that gap time. So, we have shared that you do not have to hold a spot for a child if they are not being paid. But if you make an agreement with the parent that you will hold that spot and not get paid during that gap, that can be requested, and then no attendance is required during that time. If it is a shorter gap, or even a 2 week gap, and the parent says, no, I want to use my absences during that time so that I am sure that I will have a spot at the daycare when I come back, and also that the provider gets paid, that is an option, but we want to make sure that the parent is agreeing with that, and are aware that you are using absences for that time. There's a question in here about that state discount. It is absolutely not too late to get that discount. So if you were not signed up under that discounted rate, I would make sure that you reach back out. That is available to providers still. So that again, that is available through March of 2028 at that discounted rate. Anything else that I missed from the Q&A or the chat? Great question about if your facility is closed for Christmas break, and you are still expecting payment from families, meaning that you would like to use your paid closure dates, those 16 paid closures for that break, you are welcome to do that. You would not request a gap for those dates. And that works as long as the family does not need vouchers somewhere else during your break. So we can't have vouchers assigned to your facility and paying you for paid closures, but also paying for that child to attend somewhere else during that break. So as long as it is a family who does not need break vouchers at another location, then the vouchers should stay assigned to your program so that you have the ability to use a paid closure for that time. Question about the renewal rate for Brightwheel. Brightwheel will be reaching out to all of their providers over the next few weeks via text, email, however, phone calls, however they need to get a hold of you, and they will go over all of that with you as far as what you will owe if you want to continue and what you want to have your payment frequencies. So they will explain all of that to you. Okay. So again, if your parents are doing the sign in and sign outs on your CCMS system, that is all that is required, because that parent is the one that is actually going in and doing those sign in and sign outs. So you do not have to print anything. They do not have to sign it. That system does track, though, if it is the parents or if it is a program staff that is doing those check-ins and check-outs. So if we print that and see that it is not the parents, then yes, there would be a signature required. So depends on how you're using that system. If you are using it for parents to actually be the ones doing the check-in and check-outs, that is all that is required. That is what those systems were designed for. But we are finding a lot of programs are not doing that, and only their staff is the one doing the check-in and check-out. So in that case, because the parent sees nothing, then you would have to print it out. You would have to get a parent signature to verify all of that information. If staff is doing half of the check-ins and check-outs, then you are still going to need a signature. We want to make sure that the parent is agreeing to that. So if they're not the ones doing 100% of the check-ins and check-outs, then we want to make sure that they are still verifying all of that attendance. Um, our school had a snow day. However, we made it up by adding additional time. So we pay a flat rate no matter what the time that those children were kept. So you would not get anything additional for that, and you would still have to mark the closure as a closure in the system for the day that you were closed. So as far as CCDF payments are concerned, nothing changes there. So just remember, every closure has to be marked on the closures tab. You get 16 that are paid. Anything else beyond those 16 are non-paid and get prorated. That is the only time we are prorating a payment, is if you are marking a non-paid closure. So any combination of a child being present, absent, off days if they aren't enrolled 5 days a week, and provider paid closures, those are all going to result in a full payment for that provider every single week. So the only time you will see a prorated payment is if you select a non-paid closure, and that would prorate that week at 1/5 of the normal payment. Initials are okay You don't have to have a full parent signature. We just want to make sure that they are at least agreeing to that. And yes, parents can sign off on the whole week for that printout. They do not need to initial every single check in or check out that was made by a staff member. Again, if parents are checking in but staff is checking them out, then parents are going to still have to sign at the end of that week to verify attendance for the entire week. A lot of great questions. Keep them coming if you still have more. I see we still have, quite a few participants on. So if you still have questions, that's what we're here for. How do you submit a gap in schedule, such as a spring break? If you are not expecting payment for that week, that can be reported to the eligibility office, who then would remove the vouchers for that week so that no payment is made and no attendance is required. Courtney, as long as that parent is signing in and out at the beginning and end of the day, even if they have to leave, for an appointment in the middle of the day and things like that, they do not have to go back and initial all of those. They're verifying the attendance as a whole. You do not have to send the attendance records anywhere. You are required to keep those attendance records for up to 3 years so that they are available anytime a an auditor, an investigator, a state staff asks for that backup attendance. Then you want to make sure that you have that available. So there is no need to send it in on a regular basis. But as we look at those attendance, if someone does reach out to you and ask you for those, you want to make sure that you have them available. How soon before pausing a voucher do parents need to request it? That is at least the week prior. So, anytime if they know further in advance, that's great. We can definitely set those in advance, but if they could let eligibility know the week prior, that would suffice. We can share the eligibility office emails. It depends on where you're located. We have multiple eligibility offices in the state, so we can share the map, and you can look for which county you're in and get their contact information. This is a great question about the dollar vouchers. So that means that a parent's copay is so high that they actually pay more than what the voucher allowance is. And that's why you will see a $1 voucher. So, for example, if the voucher would normally pay $45, but the parent's copay is $50, then we would leave that $1 voucher in there as a placeholder, just so that that child does not get terminated. And then the parent is essentially paying the full amount of that. So when we assign a copay, we do that based on the family's gross monthly income. It is assigned to the youngest child in the family, because typically they have the higher charges and stay in care longer. So that amount is set at a family level. It is applied to the youngest child. If the full amount can be applied to the youngest child, it will be. If not, it will leave that $1 balance and then move any remaining copay to the next child if there is one. So I know those $1 vouchers look a little wonky, but that's what they're there for. Otherwise, we would just zero them out and terminate that child because the parent is already paying that amount in full. So that $1 just leaves that voucher open for that child in case there are any changes, like the parent's income goes down, they change providers, they are school age kids who need more care during the summer at a higher rate, things like that. We want to make sure that those vouchers stay available to them, so that they don't have to reapply and go back on the waiting list. So that's why you see some of those very small vouchers sometimes. I'm not seeing any open questions in the Q&A right now. Students that are on break on a school holiday like President's Day, but they are not attending. So if it is just a single day break, and they do not come to your program, then they would be marked absent on those days. So anytime they're not at your program. Great question about that detailed payment information. That is available from you can look on your My Vouchers page and see exactly what their copay and or overage amounts are that the parents owe. Or if you need to go in and see the actual breakdown of your payments from Tyler Tech, that is available as well. Absent or off day, I'm assuming you are that's a follow-up question on President's Day. That would be an absent day if they normally attend on Mondays. So the only time you would use an off day is if that child never ever attends on Monday, then you could put them in as an off day for that Monday. But if that child typically attends Monday through Friday, they didn't attend Monday because it was a holiday, that's going to be an absence. Some of you may never have heard of that $1 voucher. I see that question in there. That is only if you have parents with very high copays. So it is entirely possible you have never seen one of those. So those are just as families have higher and higher copays that exceed the amount that the state would pay. Yes, it does count against their 40 days.
So
If you're
Shannon,
sorry, yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I'm sorry, Shannon. I was just going to say, yeah, if the program is closed, then you would enter a paid closure or non-paid closure. So then
Correct.
the absence wouldn't apply.
Correct. Yep. I was like,
we're
wait, maybe
we're
that's
going
what
to the
her
same
question.
place.
Yes. Yeah. So if your program was closed that day, so children were not given the opportunity to attend, then that would be recorded as a closure, not an absence. If the program was open but the child didn't attend, then that would be an absence. So it just depends on what your individual situation was there. I see another great question about if there is a delay, like a 2-hour delay for school. So AM preschool children were not able to attend, but the program was open for the rest of the day. Those AM preschool kids could be marked as an off day because they were not given an opportunity to attend. So we would not mark those as closure or as absences. Just like if you're a center and only individual classrooms are closed, then we would mark those as off days. Laura, did you have something to add? You're still on live mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, my
No,
apologies.
okay, just making sure. I did see a good question that came in on the chat about the school rates. So happy to address that in our last few minutes here. So that is for any program that is run by a public school or a private school corporation. So if you are a private center or home, that should not affect you. That is just for those public and private school corporations. Most of them got updated back in October when all of the rates were changed, but there were a few that did not at that time. So we are catching those programs up now, and that would be paid at that $147.20 rate. So we will have communications going out probably later this week to all programs that we believe it will apply to give you a chance to respond to those if there are any issues with that list before those rates get updated on April 5th. And then yes, if reimbursement rates are lower now than what your actual charges are, that is not a copay, that is an overage. So that is the difference between what we pay and what a family owes to you because of your charges, and that would be the family's responsibility. So there's copays based on their income, and there's overages based on the amount that the provider actually charges. Families could have one, they could have both, they could have neither. So it just depends on each individual voucher, and you can find that in your My Vouchers information. And I know we are just about at time. You are welcome to reach out to your policy consultant with any additional questions if there was anything that we missed. I always go through the Q&A, make sure that we didn't miss anything in there as well that we still need to address. And then, like I said, I will send out the slides and some other resources to everyone that registered for the webinar. Cheryl, you cannot have closures and attendance on the same day. So if only your school age children were not able to attend because that portion of your program was closed that day, then those would be off days for those children. If it was open and they didn't attend, it would be an absent. But if you were closed in that part of your program, you would mark them off days. Heather, I see that you said that you did not receive the emails. We do get a lot of emails that are kicked back as not being correct emails when we send them out. I don't know if they just get keyed in wrong or what when people register for it. So if you don't get the email, just let me know what your correct email address is, and I'll be sure that you get that because I do send it to everyone every time. But I usually get about a dozen that kick back as not being real email addresses or as being full or something like that. Okay, I know that we are at time. I see that there are still some pending questions, but to be cognizant of everyone's time, we are going to go ahead and end the webinar. I will go ahead and address those open questions so that we can make sure you know that you get your answers that you need. So
Shannon, you'll
thank you
address
for
the questions offline then via email or something?
I will. I
Okay,
will, yes.
perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Well,
everyone,
thank
for
you,
being
everybody.
here. Thank you, Kelsey. Yep.
Thanks, Shannon. Bye.
Bye-bye.